Hi, I'm Cindy Morales, and this is the Shout My Story podcast, where we share stories of women who choose life in difficult circumstances and the people who help them. If you enjoy these stories, please like, subscribe, and share our YouTube channel, Shout My Story. You can also listen to these podcasts on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Now let's get to our guests. So today we got Brad and Jesi Smith. Brad and Jesi are the parents of the marvelous and miraculous Faith Smith. We met when we were filming the short documentary that we made a few years ago called Incompatible with Life. And Faith was 10 then, and she's 15 now?
Yep, she'll be 16 next week.
So, oh my gosh. So I wanted to take this opportunity to catch up because Faith really is a miraculous and marvelous child. Young woman. She's quickly becoming a young woman.
Yes.
So for anyone who hasn't seen the mini documentary, can you just start by giving a really quick recap of your pregnancy and how you found out that Faith had trisomy 18?
Well, it was our fifth child, so my fifth pregnancy. Actually, it seemed to go pretty well until we went to a routine ultrasound. And there they found what they called soft signs of abnormality. So they're seeing structural things. They're seeing calcification in the heart, cysts in the brain, and they are seeing just different measurements for her, which all indicated trisomy 18, which is a chromosome abnormality. So most people know trisomy 21, which is Down syndrome. Edwards syndrome is trisomy 18, and it's just much harsher. You know, it just affects every organ. A lot of these chromosome abnormalities, they're really just starting to find out what is going on with the child because, as you know, so many have been aborted. They don't even really have a standard of care. These are new things for them to even know as they live. What can they expect out of the people that are alive? So as Faith becomes 16, I mean, she's kind of a forerunner for all her little friends. I mean, some people have already cut the path in different ways, but here in Michigan, one of the oldest kids that has it, and it's really a gift. We're working with wonderful doctors who are just treasure her life.
I want to hear about that, but first, can you just go through the pressure that you got from the doctors when you found out that she had trisomy 18?
Yeah, I mean, when we first met with the geneticist, we sat down with him and he started walking through all the stuff that he was pointing at, the soft signs of this and that they saw in the ultrasound. And he said, well, seeing this, I think it could be a number of things. And one of them that he named was trisomy 18. And he thought, it was more likely that was it. But he then pushed us to say, you need to get an amniocentesis. And my wife had done research before we ever went in there. And,
your fifth kid, not your first rodeo. So
she knew that the amniocentesis was going to be suggested and had done enough research to know that put any child at risk when you do an amniocentesis. Now, it's not necessarily a giant risk, but it's a risk and can cause a miscarriage. So she said, no, we're not interested in that. This child could already have some, struggles. So why would we put her at risk like that? And he said, well, and he kept pushing it. And he said it several times where I finally looked at him and I said, look, if we got the amniocentesis, and you figured out that she had a problem, could you do anything to help her? And he said, well, no. And I was trapping him. I said, so then what's the purpose? He said, well, if you want to terminate. So he literally just admitted to me that the whole purpose of the amniocentesis test was to identify a disabled child to exterminate them. And that being the entire purpose of identifying her, not to help her, to kill her. And it was tremendous pressure. And every family we work with, they face the same kind of pressure.
Yeah, still, 16 years later, people are still having these same conversations. Prenatal tests are used like search and destroy missions.
I think that's one of the questions I had wanted to ask you is if you had seen any difference between 16 years ago and now? Because I do remember when we were filming, Dr. Carey, one of the, I guess he's a founder of SOFT, and he's in the film, and he said in like the 1970s when he was a new doctor, because he's rather elderly now, they were having the ethics committees in the hospitals then were having discussions on whether or not you should give heart surgery to a kid with Downs,
Right.
because they're all going to die anyway, basically.
Right.
And now you would never have that conversation for a Downs kid, but now you have those conversations with the Trisomy 18 kids, and he sees that maybe at some point the needle's going to move. But you haven't seen it yet?
No, we've definitely seen a move in terms of treatment for trisomy 18 kids.
In the right place.
In the right place.
With the right doctor.
Right. And
okay, so let's go.
But there's more of them now doing it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's good. Let's go back to Faith. So when she was born, obviously you didn't abort. Did you get pressure from more than just that geneticist, or was it just that one time?
Oh, all the way along.
Oh, it was all the way.
We've had things like a nurse that said I didn't have to feed her, which, it's just, you're almost stunned in the
After she was born.
After she was born.
Not even,
so
yeah.
really, you cannot have this push to get rid of disabled people and children and then think those same medical professionals are going to all of a sudden go, well, we'd love to treat them now. That's just not the way it happens. First of all, they're ignorant in their own field because they don't have any patients like that, because the over 90% of children like Faith are aborted. So most doctors are not running into children like Faith, especially at her age. You feel like you're rewriting the book every time with every new doctor. But so we've had, a nurse say, well, when she was having some issues being fed, I ask everybody, you never know what somebody will say. So the nurse that was helping her that day, as we were actually leaving a hospital, and Faith was sitting up in bed playing, and, do you have any tricks, tips, things to better feed her? And she goes, well, you don't have to feed her. I don't understand why, these special needs parents don't
know when to let go.
Yeah, don't know when to let go. And I'm flummoxed. I'm like, well, I have 4 older children. I feed them too. Like, wouldn't Child Protective Services be
You'd think
called?
they would call CPS if you weren't willing to feed your kid.
But you're in this different world that I didn't know about. 4 children, pretty typical health. And then we come to Faith and we are fighting for the things we're paying them to do. And so, just kind of crazy conversations all the way along. So much so that I start, then you get wise. You just want to cut that ugly head off when you're talking to a new professional. So I start a new appointment with a new doctor saying, I just want you to know, starvation is not a medical treatment, and overdosing.
How old was Faith when that nurse said that?
What was she? She was.
Oh gosh, she was.
She already had her G tube.
Yeah, she was. Like I would guess.
5
Yeah, she was a few years old. I
Yeah.
mean, young, but a few years old.
My goodness.
Yeah.
She was
Okay.
smiley, sitting in the bed playing.
Yeah.
It's not like, I think anytime you have somebody with a nasal cannula laying down in the bed, I don't care if it's you or me, you get a day laying in a hospital, we all look pretty rough, But she didn't even look rough that day. I don't understand. I think it's that mentality that some people are better off dead.
It's I think it's just a utilitarian worldview that so many of our medical professionals hold. I just think it comes down to that. They see the child as a waste of scarce medical resources.
I think, too, there's a supposition that special needs kids suffer needlessly. And so as a parent, you'd be doing the kind thing by aborting them, which is something I want to chat with you about in a second. But first, can you just go through real quick the medical challenges that you faced when Faith was born and how they were overcome? Because she is a kind of a medical miracle. I know there's other kids like her, but most kids with trisomy 18 don't survive to their first birthday. So what did you face and what did you do?
Well, and see, that's the problem. Most of them don't survive because they don't treat them. It's where they get treatment. Actually, we have a study at the University of Michigan. Our doctor, our ENT there for Faith is Dr. Glenn Green, and I sent him tons of kids over the years. So now he has his own study, and we actually have a 90% survival rate to the first birthday at Michigan when parents do everything they can to help their child. And they do need a lot of things. No, there's no doubt about it. These kids are, they need interventions. And typically the first things that you face when you have a trisomy 18 diagnosis is, and they'll always go right to this, the heart issues. Typical for a trisomy 18 kid is to have, holes in the heart. So VSD, which is ventricular septal defect, or an ASD, which is the upper chamber where you'd have holes. And so that's usually, and it can get more complicated than that, but that's kind of the base typical problem with a T18 child. And that's what Faith had. She had a giant VSD though. I mean, it was like huge. And typically when they'll listen to the heart, they'll hear a murmur, and she had no murmur because the hole was so big, the blood was just flowing right through.
And if you don't treat that, if you don't treat those conditions, will the baby die?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. If you don't deal with it, and sometimes holes can close on their own. In Faith's case, it actually closed, her body closed it down to a small hole from being giant. And we didn't do heart surgery for several years because of that. We waited and discovered that was a mistake. We should have done it much, much earlier. And part of that is because the medical community has, they're learning themselves because they haven't been doing this. And
okay. So heart, and then what's another challenge?
The other main issue that you face is airway. Yeah. So, and the thing is that often will get overlooked by the medical community, the airway stuff. And what I started figuring out why we've had so much success with our ENT at Mott is he listened and took it very seriously, and he deals with the airway issues quickly, very early, because they'll often blame it all on the heart, but actually the airway is typically what kills the kids when they're little. So they can't breathe properly, and they end up with carbon dioxide poisoning.
Is this the central apnea? The idea that they have central apnea?
Yeah, except it's kind of funny that central apnea always gets pushed as the problem for these kids, which is, for those who don't know what central apnea is, that's where your brain doesn't really tell your body to breathe properly. And so they'll go, well, there's nothing we can do about that, which that's actually not true. You can treat central apnea. But central apnea is not the biggest problem with these kids. It does happen. But in my experience, it's not common. It's actually obstructive apnea, which means, either the tonsils or the tongue, or maybe they've got Malaysia in their trachea area, or Malaysia in their bronchial area, where you have essentially a floppy airway that it'll just close and they can't breathe. But all of these things are treatable. There are ways to help that child breathe properly. From, our daughter ended up having a jaw distraction surgery, so they lengthened her jaw, and that brought everything out. So it opened up her airway. She could breathe better. To, you could need a trach, where they do a trach, and then they'll put a vent on, the child can have a vent so that they can keep pressure on that airway to keep it open.
Is that forever, though? Do you have to have that forever, your whole life?
No.
Okay.
Sometimes, it's possible. But even then, we've gone to the zoo with people who have trachs and vents. And
we know several families that as they got older, they were able to get rid of the trach.
Yeah, so they'll decannulate.
It could be a temporary solution until they get bigger, stronger, and it's just amazing. I don't know. We are just so amazed that God brought the right people, like Dr. Green or at the right time, because nobody was offering things to us. Even when we were looking at heart surgery, that cardiologist that we saw, the first one we saw, once he found out our daughter had trisomy 18, he saw her in the hospital when she was born. We didn't know, we knew there was something genetic. There's a look, just like Down syndrome, there's kind of a look to our trisomy 18 children.
But he had no clue.
He didn't know. And when he found out, then he said, well, you'll have to go to an ethics board. And so we left there. There's nothing worse than just going to doctors and begging them to do the job that you paid them to do. And it really was so funny because he had already examined her. She was a great candidate for the
Yeah.
surgery.
He
He
was
had
like,
looked
"It's
at
a
her.
one
He had
and
done all the
done."
tests.
Yeah.
It's a one and done. And yet then he gets that. And I think some of it is they're scared. You know, the numbers scare them as well. They don't want a child to die with them. But other parts is just that, hey, if you're sending this kid automatically to an ethics board, you're not looking out what's best for that child. We already knew surgery.
Except this doctor, actually, we know other parents who went to him, and he's only gotten harder and harder.
Yeah.
He's worse and worse now.
Let's talk a little bit about ethics boards. I don't think most people understand that hospitals have ethics boards and what their function is. Talk about that a bit.
Yeah.
Well, I think my surprise was that the ethics board was not for the people that work there.
Right.
You know, like I would think if you have an ethics community,
That would be
your
where
business,
we should take him
Yes.
for not treating.
No,
right?
It was more that, I mean, we know many families. I've sat in on another ethics committee meeting where they couldn't even do the surgery for the child at that hospital. But that doctor did not want that surgery done anywhere else, suggested they go to an ethics committee at a hospital that couldn't even help their son, and then called like 6 or 7 times, which is just crazy, to the next doctors to try to influence them not to treat this child.
So the hospital that the child was being transferred to, he was trying to influence their decisions,
right,
pushing them not to treat.
But
okay, so technically, what is the function of the ethics board? What is it supposed to be versus what is it, or is there a discrepancy?
Well, an ethics board should be about holding a standard, holding doctors accountable, for how they treat patients. That's what an ethics board
I think
should
it's even when the doctors have a problem doing it, they do bring it. And this is what I didn't know. I didn't know that it wasn't all doctors on there. You're not necessarily making a medical decision. They're making an ethical decision for you and sometimes the doctors. And so to me, you don't even have you're not having surgeons on there all consulting and doing a conference. This is people they could have, other parents. It depends how they make up their ethics board.
Right. But does the ethics board make, say, a decision that your child is very sick because of trisomy 18, and so therefore we're not going to do the XYZ surgery?
Yes. In fact, one of the other parents that we know that, again, was at that same doctor that wanted us to go to the ethics board said the same thing to them. And as a parent, a lot of times you don't realize, hey, I can go somewhere else.
My sister called around, got us a new cardiologist. We left that hospital system altogether.
But they didn't.
They
felt trapped.
Yeah.
And so they stayed, and they said, okay, well, we'll go to the ethics board meeting. And so they showed up for the meeting, and they were actually told they wouldn't be allowed in to the meeting. The dad went crazy.
I think I know who you're talking about.
He yelled at them in Italian and English.
Yeah.
And intimidated them enough that they said, okay, you can come into the meeting. At that point, I think he kind of won the day, and they agreed to do the heart surgery.
And that kid is still alive. That kid is still with us. I know who you're talking about.
That child is still alive.
Yeah, the reason I'm bringing it up is because I don't think the average person, because I'm considering myself the average person here, would think that there are people in a hospital that are going to make decisions not to give treatment based on disability. That's like a shock.
Let me share this. Actually, one of the studies, because of all the research this one over here does, she's a big time researcher. So she found a study that was done where they sent out, it was like 3,000 surveys to neonatologists across the country. 490 neonatologists responded. So this is not like some little number, right? The question that was asked was, do you think that it is ethically permissible to put a do not resuscitate order onto a child you deem is not able to survive? So it's already their opinion. You think this kid can't survive. Is it ethically permissible to put a DNR on that child without even asking the parents' permission?
Mm-hmm.
76% of NICU doctors said it was ethically permissible to do that.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's scary when you get into it and you figure out these people are making decisions all the time without even consulting the people involved.
It happened during COVID a lot. There was a couple group homes. I think it was out in Oregon and Colorado. National Public Radio did several pieces on this. They had a whole series where people that had disability from group homes went in, and they wanted to say that they were triaging them. They weren't even going to treat them. And so there was lawsuits because they put do not resuscitate on their files of these people who had come in just to be treated like anybody else, and the hospital systems did not want to treat them. And so this continues to happen. And these were people that one of them had Down syndrome. So these are people they know can live pretty typical lifestyles considering, and that wanted to live. And then you have doctors deciding for them, which in my mind is why all this medical aid in dying push that they're trying to bring around the country is so scary, because as the disability community, we know this has already been happening. They just don't have the law that makes it legal for them to do it. So it's, can you catch them, right? You know, the 11th commandment, thou shalt not get caught. But if they make this legal, everybody's in peril, not just the disabled, that you have a doctor deciding, well, your life's not that great, or I don't think you're worth my time, resources, as if they're not getting paid. But I think that's the scary part. I think we have a whole medical system starting with abortion and saying some people aren't valuable enough to even be born. And then it continues on because you have the hospital systems, the doctors are the ones being taught like that. And so to them, it's like, well, we get to choose, you know, who lives, who dies.
Isn't that what the ethics board does right now? Isn't the ethics board already making those decisions? Like, we're going to put a DNR on that kid? Because
yes, I know there's been some good places.
Yeah, not all of them operate the same way.
You're trying to find what's best. I know there are sticky situations in every, you know, we create them. We are the sticky people. Faith is not easy. So, however, you know, for me, there's certain people that I don't even want in the room anymore, because I need to talk to, if my daughter needs a surgery, I'd like to talk to the surgeon. I don't want to talk to your social worker. I don't need to talk to, you know, 20 other people that are you know, people in the hospital. We're making medical decisions here. And I know that's hard for some people, but I think because we have a society that does not value life, they are putting equal helping somebody or killing them. And I think that's what I find terribly disturbing. We do not leave my daughter's bedside when she's there. Wow. She can't speak for herself, so we'll speak for her.
We only have a few minutes left, and I want to hear a little bit more about how Faith is right now. How's she doing? What's her life? What's her typical day like these days?
Oh, overall, she's doing pretty well. At age 12, she was diagnosed with epilepsy because she started having seizures.
I hate the seizures. Hate them.
They don't know why it started. They don't know what caused it. I have my theories about it. She has a pancreatic issue that we think maybe played into it. We just didn't realize it was happening her whole life, that she had this pancreatic issue. Now we're working on that. So we're in the process of working on this pancreas issue, which is another amazing thing. Anyone that thinks, you know, we shouldn't do stuff to these kids, well, let me tell you, we have a brand new pancreatic clinic starting at the University of Michigan Mott Children's Hospital because of Faith. Because that doctor did novel care on her that gave him, made people know who he was. And it made him stand out because he is a great doctor.
Oh, he's excellent.
And now he is starting a clinic because of that. And so, you know, here's this little girl who, you know, as you said, the whole thing of, oh, well, they're suffering. Well, does she suffer? Absolutely. Everybody suffers. We all suffer in life.
All of our children suffer. We're their parents. I think that's just a part of life. I think to point out one person suffering and say this is worse. We have all kinds of kids in this country that are dealing with not knowing who they really are. We have them dealing with depression and just like a hopelessness. That's suffering. In fact, doctors have, as a profession, have a really high margin of suicide, depression, substance abuse rates. And it's interesting what they suggest to one another, which is early intervention, help,
not killing them,
mentors. But they never suggested any of, and this is like well known around the world, 150 years of studies. They never suggest that they kill one another. And I would just like that also applied to my child. Like, yes, she may be going through something hard. Why don't we help her?
Well,
Wouldn't that be novel?
And look, everybody suffers. Suffering is a part of life. In fact, the way I say it, life is suffering. It's a struggle. It's a fight. We have to work every day so we can provide for ourselves, for our families, so we can eat, so we can survive. Death is really easy to find and doesn't need any help. Just stop. Just stop working. Stop trying to live. Stop eating, and you'll die. And so, Faith is doing pretty well overall.
Yeah, let's get to the good stuff. What does she do when she's not suffering? Yeah. What's she doing?
She is, well, she'll be 16 next week.
We're going to the zoo. We're seeing the zoo lights. We're taking our whole family. Yep. So we're going to celebrate with them. She was like when our daughter got married, she was in her wedding. Was a junior bridesmaid. Yeah. So, as far as we do stuff, life's we're at the fun stage where for school, it's more about like her learning to transfer and doing more like social skills. So we get like all the fun stuff. We're out in the community, going to the museums.
She is and the zoo. She's one of the smiliest kids that you'll meet. She loves and enjoys life more than most people do.
She's probably the most content person in our family, and absolutely. She's the one who gives you a hug and a smile when she sees you.
She's the only kid left that still likes, that still is grateful that Dad shows up in his home.
But she does that to all of them. So there's a gift to a person in your family that's always happy to see you, that always reaches for you, that, my kids, they'll go sit by her and hug her first because she's reaching for him already. So she brings a lot of love to our family. Yeah. And she walks around in her gate trainer still. In fact, Brad had to make this log thing around our tree because she loves like reaching into the tree. So we kind of stop the wheels of her gate trainer while she's walking so she can't pull the whole thing down because she's done this before, but she loves it. So just, I don't know, it helps you remember that life is a gift. When even all the simple things, she finds joy in them every day. And so, when the sun rises every day and she smiles that there's a warm breeze, my gosh, it reminds you what to be thankful. So in our place in our home, she has a real gift of just reminding us to be thankful and joyful in every moment. And
I just got a little.
We need more people like that in this world.
A little thing it's getting cold now, right? And so.
Are you going to talk about her?
her feet will get cold, and so we'll stick her. When we go up, we'll put her in bed, and we have this heating pad that we'll put under her feet, and as soon as it hits, I'm telling you, she's like. Oh, I mean, it's the funniest reaction to see her. She loves that heating pad on her feet.
So what I hear you say is, even though you have had a lot of medical challenges in the last few years, I know because I follow you on Facebook, there's still a lot of joy. And that's
absolutely.
So we've got like 1 minute left, right? 2 minutes left. In the last 2 minutes, can you give some advice to people who may receive this diagnosis when they're pregnant?
Yeah, absolutely. Reach out. You could go on Facebook, and there are Facebook groups you can join with that all kinds of parents are on that have children with trisomy 18. You can connect with us. I mean, just email us. My email it's Brad Jesi, so BRADJESI @proton.me. So if you email us, we will walk with you. We will help you. We do it all the time with parents. And in fact, I just got a text from a parent as we were sitting here who we've been helping that's getting transferred from one hospital to another. And actually two of them. Another one is working on the same thing. So we're trying to help them get to doctors who will help their children. And we help them with the answers and the questions that they get asked and all the stuff. We give them the words to say. So, we didn't have those words when we were first doing it. Now we do. So we help them with all of that stuff so they can get the care that their child needs.
I think it's fair to say that you guys are well known in the Trisomy 18 community is a small community and the people know each other. I think you guys are really well known for being huge advocates for parents and children. So yeah, absolutely. Brad Jesi at proton.me. Proton.me.
Proton, PROTON.me.
Thank you so much. All right. Are we good? We're good. Okay. So thanks so much for being on the show. I so appreciate it. I love catching up. We're going to have to do it again in another couple of years when Faith turns 18.
Oh, yeah.
So if you have a story to share, would you please contact me at info@shoutmystory.org. That's info@shoutmystory.org. Thanks for listening. Choose love, choose life.